Hey guys, welcome back. This is Pastor Jay with Intelligent Faith 315. Here we are in Reason to Believe, our Apologetics video class. And we're continuing on today with Lesson 3, What is Truth? Does truth exist? Is truth knowable? Do encourage you to go check out our first two lessons, What is Apologetics and Why Should We Do That? And then number 2, The War of the Worldviews. This is Lesson 3, as I said, Is truth knowable and does it exist? So we're just going to get right into it and continue where we left off last time. So last time, we began to address these two major points in our outline, what is truth and can truth be known? And for the first point, what is truth, we defined truth like this. According to the correspondence theory of truth, we said that truth is that which tells it like it is, it corresponds to the facts, and it matches its object. We talked about how there are competing theories of truth, the coherence theory of truth, the pragmatic theory of truth, the sincerest theory. There's many other ways that you seek to define truth, and those are self-contradictory, they're self-defeating. And it does seem that the only way to really define truth that's logically kind of robust and strong, but also the way that we use truth in our everyday lives, is the correspondence theory of truth. This is all how most of us would define, and even if we would deny that we live with and use truth. Tells it like it is, it corresponds to the facts, and matches its object. And then we talked about how falsity is exactly the opposite. It is that thing which does not tell it like it is, does not correspond to the facts, and does not match its object. And again, if you disagree with the correspondence theory of truth, that truth is that which corresponds to reality, corresponds to its object, if you deny that, you have to ask yourself, are you consistent with that as you relate to other people? When you go home at nighttime and you talk to your children, you relate to your friends, your co-workers, you shouldn't really get mad at them if they say things that don't tell it like it is, don't correspond to the facts, and don't match their object. You shouldn't really get mad at them for violating that correspondence theory of truth if you don't think that's what truth is, because technically they're not lying or deceiving you. So we talked about that's the definition of falsehood. We talked about what self-defeating statements are, just in a real basic sense. For example, if someone says, I can't speak a word in English, you would say, isn't that in English? So that's obvious. We talked about the fact that atheism, that absolute claim that there is no God, that is also a self-defeating statement, because you're making an absolute claim to knowledge. But if you have absolute knowledge, well, then you yourself would fall into the definition of God. We talked about the claim of scientism is also logically self-defeating. Scientism, which is very common today in academia, claims that if your truth claim cannot be expressed in the language of chemistry or physics, it's meaningless. In other words, if you can't help me see it, taste it, touch it, feel it, etc. empirically in the language of physics or chemistry, it's meaningless. And perhaps many of you would subscribe to that view, but that also is a self-defeating claim. Why? Because it cannot meet up to its own standards or criteria. That statement itself cannot be expressed in the language of physics or in the language of chemistry. And believe it or not, self-defeating ideas like that have existed in academia for generations, only to be defeated later. For example, do some research on an old philosophy called verificationism. Verificationism, which was also called logical positivism, and this died out in the mid-20th century because people realized it was a self-defeating statement. And scientism, which I just told you, is a rephrasing of the old verificationism. That also is a self-defeating idea. And so it's really important to understand what self-defeating statements are. And the claim that we made last time is that if we seek to define truth in any other way other than the correspondence theory of truth, it turns out to be self-defeating. So for example, if someone says, well, I don't agree with the correspondence theory, that is, a truth is not telling it like it is, well, then the immediate question to examine and test that statement would be what? Isn't that telling it like it is? So again, this kind of a statement or this kind of an idea is using the correspondence way of looking at truth to disprove the correspondence way of looking at truth. It's like using the laws of logic to disprove the laws of logic. You're using the very thing that you're trying to disprove, which only proves that it's actually true. So that's an interesting thing. Kind of need to analyze if our beliefs are self-contradictory or not. This is where we left off last time. We're going to now begin to investigate these these alternative ways of looking at truth and see if they hold up to, logical scrutiny and kind of an intellectual investigation. So again, like we said last time, we have relativism. Relativism denies absolute truth. They say that there's subjective truth, individual truth, but not absolute truth. Agnosticism, which denies all truth. This in the Greek actually means no knowledge, gnosis. And then skepticism doubts all truth. Skeptics, this is actually born out of a pre-Socratic school of Greek philosophy. And even to this day, we use this word skepticism, and they doubt all truth, except, of course, the truth of skepticism. Postmodernism, they affirm no truth. And then, of course, pluralism, which is one of the most dangerous. It affirms opposite, quote-unquote, truths, that opposite truth claims can be true simultaneously. So let's investigate these, and let's just see how they hold up under investigation. Now let me just encourage you, the viewer, in something. If you hold to one of these ways of looking at truth or ways of defining truth, some would say to one of these theories of truth, I want to challenge you with something. If you realize that the way that you look at truth is actually self-defeating, if it's actually self-contradictory, then one of the best things that you can do for yourself is to attain a theory of truth that is not self-contradictory, that is not self-defeating, and to be a consistent thinker in this area of your life. And so I just want to challenge you now. Be honest, be open, and if you discover, like modern academic philosophy did in the mid-20th century, that all of them were endorsing for generations a theory of philosophy that was self-defeating, verificationism, but at least they were honest enough to recognize that and then reject it. I encourage you to just analyze your own way of looking at truth, and if it turns out to be self-contradictory or self-defeating, go with what logic would tell you. Okay, let's really pursue the truth, and if we find out that we have a self-defeating idea about truth, let's exchange it for another one. Okay, so as we jump into this, first of all, we get into agnosticism. So agnosticism would tell us, as you can see, that truth about reality is ultimately unknowable. As you can see here, this gentleman, Immanuel Kant, if you're at all interested in philosophy, Immanuel Kant is just adored by so many people, and he's made some interesting contributions to the area of philosophy. So an interesting way to remember what Kant viewed in terms of agnosticism about truth would be this, that he affirmed that we can't know truth about reality. Kind of a play on words there, but it's a way to remember what Kant thought about truth. He said that we can't, or we cannot know the truth about reality. He said that we can only know the appearance, not the thing in and of itself, not reality. And if you read Kant's books, which are available today all over on Amazon, you can understand this. He says, we cannot know the thing in itself, only the thing as it would appear to us. He says that we must remain agnostic about reality. So he says that truth about reality is ultimately unknowable. We can only know the thing as it appears to us. We can only know it by its appearance. We can't know the thing in itself in reality. So Kant holds to agnosticism. So a response to agnosticism, well, agnosticism fails for the very simple reason that it is self-defeating. And of course, if we discover, again, if we hold to anything that's self-defeating as a Christian, as a theist, as an atheist, as a pantheist, a polytheist, whatever the case would be, then you need to be a consistent, rational, logical thinker. If you hold to a self-defeating idea, you must reject it. You must jettison it and continue to hold on to truth, to seek after truth. Agnosticism fails because by claiming to know the truth about reality, that we cannot know any truth about reality. So very simple. It seems very simplistic, but because of that fact alone, you can dismiss it. It says that we cannot know the truth about reality, but agnosticism claims to know about reality, that we cannot know the truth about reality. And so Kant, unfortunately, he does engage in a lot of self-defeating practices and ideas as he frames his philosophy. So agnosticism would seem to fail because it is self-defeating. They claim not to know, but the problem is they are knowing that they can't know, so it fails. Now you have to realize that there are different versions of agnosticism. And you may be an agnostic yourself, and that's not a bad position to take. It's better to take than some dogmatic, absolute position like atheism, where you say that there is no God, there is no morality, etc. And if you're an atheist, that's okay. We're going to talk about that as well. But there are different versions of agnosticism. Some people have said that there are soft agnostics, and these are simply people that say, well, I don't know. I'm not really sure about God. I'm not really sure about truth. I don't know. That's what you could call a soft agnostic. And a hard agnostic is what you would call Immanuel Kant, that we can't know the truth about reality. We can't know the truth about God, etc. So if you are an agnostic, that's fine, but hopefully you would fall into this soft camp of agnosticism where it says, well, I just don't know. I believe that we can know, but either I haven't done the investigation myself, or I just haven't made up my mind. I'm just not sure about this yet. Don't be a hard agnostic who makes this absolute claim. You cannot know the truth, because that hard claim, hard agnosticism, is self-defeating, as you can see. Skepticism, David Hume, of course, is the man to look to for this one here. David Hume, a very influential figure in the history of thought and the history of philosophy. The skeptics basically would say that we doubt all truth. David Hume and the like of him, they would say that we should doubt everything about reality, that we can only know sense data. And so again, this is going back to what we referred to earlier, verificationism, logical positivism, or what today is called scientism. That if your truth claim cannot be defined or explained in the language of sense data, through the language of physics or chemistry and whatnot, then it's meaningless. David Hume, as an empiricist, was very much like this. He says we should suspend judgment on all truth claims about reality. So again, skeptics, or skepticism itself, says that we should doubt all truth. We should doubt everything about reality. We can only know sense data, and we should suspend judgment on all truth claims about reality. Does it pass the test? Are there any contradictions within skepticism? Well, I'm sure that you saw it coming. Skepticism fails because either it is self-defeating. How? By claiming that we should doubt everything, including skepticism. Okay, so if skepticism says we should be skeptical about everything, then we should be skeptical about skepticism, which means that we shouldn't be skeptics. So if skepticism was right, it would be wrong, because it's a self-defeating truth claim. And then, or number two, it begs the question by claiming that skepticism is the only view that should not be doubted. So if right, on the face of it, that skepticism is saying that we are the only view that should not be investigated, this truth claim about reality, that all truth should be doubted except skepticism, that's begging the question, which is in and of itself a logical fallacy. So again, skepticism fails because it's self-defeating or it begs the question. So again, be in the search for truth, but if you take a hardcore position to doubt all truth, well, that's a self-defeating position. Now, again, just like with agnosticism, there are kind of different ways to look at skepticism. There are what some people would call methodological skepticism. Methodological skepticism. And methodological skepticism is using skepticism as kind of a method to arrive at truth. And that's good. That's actually fine. You should be skeptical about truth claims. You should be skeptical about what I'm telling you. I don't think you should believe everything that I'm telling you, blindly. I don't, as a Christian, believe in blind faith. The Christian scriptures do not teach blind faith. And no human should blindly accept truth claims. We should be skeptical in the sense of testing and probing and investigating and evaluating truth claims. So that's what you would call methodological skepticism. Skepticism becomes a method, kind of a tool to use to arrive at truth claims. And so methodological skepticism is good, it's healthy, we want it, we like it, we need that. Methodological skepticism is good. Hardcore skepticism, where you make this hardcore claim that we doubt all truth, that just happens to be logically self-defeating because either you don't meet up to the demands of your own statement, or you're just begging the question. So we'll stop there. 15 minutes are up. Don't want to make the video too long. Come back and join us again for part 3 of this third lesson. Does truth exist, and is it knowable? Okay, see you next time. Until then, have an intelligent faith.